She thought the worst night of her life would be seeing her ex-fiancé with another woman. She was wrong. The worst night was the moment she grabbed a stranger's collar and begged him to kiss her, just to survive the humiliation. But the stranger wasn't just anyone. Alessandro Moretti didn't do favors. He didn't play games, and he certainly didn't kiss women who threw themselves at him. Yet he kissed her anyway. By the time Lena Carter realized what she'd done, it was already too late. She'd made a deal with the devil himself, and he wasn't letting go. If you want to see how Lena's desperate choice changes everything, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches. The ballroom glittered like a jewelry box turned inside out. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across polished marble floors, and the air smelled of expensive perfume, aged wine, and old money. Lena Carter stood near the edge of the room, gripping a champagne flute she hadn't taken a single sip from, trying to remember why she'd thought coming here was a good idea. The answer, of course, was standing 20 feet away, laughing too loudly at something that wasn't funny. Julian Reed, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd promised her forever and delivered 6 months of lies instead. The man who'd smiled at her over breakfast while texting another woman under the table. The man who'd made her feel like she was losing her mind for noticing the lipstick stains, the late nights, the sudden cold distance in his eyes. And now he was here, at the same charity gala, with her. The woman was everything Lena wasn't. Tall, blonde, draped in a dress that probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent. She had her hand on Julian's arm like she owned him. And maybe she did. Maybe that was the trade-off. Maybe Julian preferred women who didn't ask questions, who didn't work double shifts at the hospital, who didn't smell like antiseptic and exhaustion. Lena's best friend, Maya, had dragged her here tonight. "You need to get out," Maya had said. "You need to remember you're more than what he made you feel like." But standing here now, watching Julian lean in to whisper something in that woman's ear, Lena didn't feel like more. She felt like less, like a shadow, like a mistake he'd corrected. "Stop staring," Maya hissed, appearing at Lena's elbow with a fresh drink. "He's not worth it." "I'm not staring." "You're staring, and he knows it. Don't give him the satisfaction." Lena dragged her gaze away, but it was too late. Julian had seen her. Their eyes met across the crowd, and for a single, horrible moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. Then he smiled. Not a kind smile. Not even a polite smile. It was the smile of a man who knew exactly how much power he still held. And then he started walking toward her. "Oh, hell no," Maya muttered. "We're leaving." "We can't just leave. Watch me." But before Maya could grab her arm, Julian was already there, the blonde trailing behind him like an accessory. "Lena," he said, his voice smooth and warm, as if they were old friends running into each other at a coffee shop. "I didn't know you'd be here." Liar. He'd known. The guest list had been circulated weeks ago. He'd known, and he'd come anyway, probably hoping for exactly this moment. "Julian," Lena said, keeping her voice flat. "Samantha." The blonde's name was Samantha. Lena had found out through Instagram, because of course she had, because she'd spent 3 weeks after the breakup scrolling through photos like a masochist, trying to figure out what Samantha had that she didn't. "It's so good to see you," Julian continued, as if Lena had responded with enthusiasm instead of ice. "You look well." Translation: "You look worse than I remember." Lena was suddenly, painfully aware of the dress she was wearing. A simple black number she'd owned for years, the kind of thing you pulled out when you needed to look presentable but didn't have the energy to care. Next to Samantha's shimmering emerald silk, Lena looked like she'd raided a clearance rack. "You too," Lena said, because what else was there to say? Samantha smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Julian's told me so much about you." "I doubt that," Lena thought, but she kept her mouth shut. "We're actually here supporting the Children's Hospital Foundation," Julian said, gesturing vaguely toward the stage where the evening speeches would soon begin. "Samantha's family is one of the main donors." Of course they were. "That's wonderful," Lena said, her jaw aching from the effort of keeping her expression neutral. "I work in pediatric ICU, so I know how much the foundation does." It was a small jab, A reminder that while Samantha's family wrote checks, Lena actually saved children's lives. But Julian didn't flinch. He just nodded, as if she'd said something vaguely interesting. "Well, we should let you get back to your evening," he said, already turning away. "It was good seeing you, Lena." And just like that, he dismissed her. Again. Samantha gave a little wave, her diamond bracelet catching the light, and then they were gone, swallowed back into the crowd of beautiful, important people who belonged here in a way Lena never would. Maya was saying something, her voice tight with anger, but Lena couldn't hear her over the roaring in her ears. Her chest felt tight, her hands were shaking. She needed to leave. She needed to get out of this room, out of this building, out of this entire nightmare of an evening before she did something humiliating like cry. But she couldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the floor, and her vision was starting to blur, and she could feel the panic rising in her throat like bile. And then she saw him. A man standing alone near the bar, watching the crowd with the kind of detached interest that suggested he was here out of obligation rather than desire. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones. Strong jaw. Eyes so dark they were almost black and fixed in that moment directly on her. Lena didn't think. She just moved. She crossed the ballroom in a blur, her heels clicking against the marble, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have anything except desperation and the certainty that if she didn't do something, anything, right now, she was going to fall apart. The man watched her approach, his expression unreadable. Up close, he was even more intimidating, older than her by at least a decade, maybe more, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her car. There was something about him that radiated control, power, danger. But Lena was past caring. She stopped in front of him, so close she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. Her hand reached out before she could stop it, fingers curling into the lapel of his jacket. "I need you to do something for me," she said, her voice low and urgent. The man's eyebrow lifted just slightly. "And what would that be?" "Kiss me." For a moment he didn't react. He just stared at her, those black eyes boring into hers like he was trying to read her mind. Then, slowly, one corner of his mouth curved upward. "Excuse me?" "My ex is watching," Lena said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "He's over there with his new girlfriend, and he thinks I'm pathetic, and I need him to think I've moved on. Just one kiss, please. I'm begging you." She was begging a complete stranger to kiss her in the middle of a crowded ballroom because she couldn't stand the idea of Julian Reed thinking he'd broken on her. The man studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to her hand still clutching his jacket, then back up again. When he spoke, his voice was low and smooth, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. "You're serious?" "Completely. You realize you're asking a stranger to touch you in front of a room full of people?" "I'm aware. And you have no idea who I am." "I don't care who you are." Another pause. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and covered her hand with his own. His fingers were warm, his grip firm but not threatening. "What's his name?" the man asked. "Your ex." Julian Reed. I know who he is." Something in the way he said it made Lena's stomach twist. But before she could ask what he meant, he was moving, his free hand sliding around her waist and pulling her closer. Not roughly, not urgently, just with the kind of calm, controlled certainty that suggested he did exactly what he wanted, when he wanted, and the world bent to accommodate him. "Then let's give him something to see," the man murmured. And then he kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, messy kiss Lena had imagined. It wasn't a performance, all flash and no substance. It was something else entirely, slow, deliberate, devastating. His mouth moved against hers with a confidence that stole her breath, his hand tightening on her waist, his other hand releasing hers to cup the back of her neck. Lena forgot where she was, forgot why she was doing this, forgot everything except the heat of his mouth, the solidness of his body, the way he kissed her like he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second of it. When he finally pulled back, Lena's knees were weak. Her lips were tingling. Her heart was racing for an entirely different reason now. The man looked down at her, his expression still unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of interest maybe, or amusement. "Was that sufficient?" he asked, his voice dry. Lena couldn't speak. She just nodded. "Good." He released her, stepping back with the kind of easy grace that suggested he'd just done her a favor as casually as holding a door. Lena wobbled slightly on her heels, and his hand shot out to steady her, fingers wrapping around her elbow. "Careful," he said. "I'm fine," Lena managed, though her voice came out breathless and shaky. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome." He let go of her elbow and reached into his jacket, pulling out a business card. He held it out to her, and Lena took it automatically, her fingers still trembling. "In case you need anything else," he said. Lena looked down at the card. It was simple, expensive-looking, with a name printed in clean black letters. Alessandro Moretti. No title, no company name, just the name, a phone number, and an address. When she looked up, he was already turning away, moving through the crowd with the kind of effortless authority that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. Lena stood there, clutching the card, trying to remember how to breathe. "Lena." She turned. Maya was there, her eyes wide, her mouth hanging open. Did he just... "I don't want to talk about it," Lena said. "Are you insane? Do you have any idea who that was?" "Some guy. I don't know. It doesn't matter." "It doesn't." "Lena, that was Alessandro Moretti." The name meant nothing to Lena. She shook her head, still dazed. "So?" Maya grabbed her arm, her grip tight enough to hurt. "So he's not just some guy. He's... God, Lena, how do you not know? He's one of the most powerful men in New York. He owns half the real estate in Manhattan. He has connections to..." She lowered her voice. "People say he's connected. Like, connected. Lena's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, connected?" "I mean the kind of connected that makes people disappear if they cross him. I mean the kind of connected that gets federal investigations shut down with a phone call. I mean..." Maya stopped, her face pale. "Lena, you just kissed a crime boss." The words didn't make sense, crime boss. That was something from movies, from TV shows. Not from real life, not from a charity gala in a glittering ballroom. Lena looked down at the business card in her hand. The name stared back at her, black on white, undeniable. Alessandro Moretti. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Well, he knows you now," Maya said. "And trust me, that's not necessarily a good thing." Across the room, Lena caught sight of Julian. He was staring at her, his face sheet white, his hand gripping Samantha's arm so tightly the woman winced. For the first time all night, he didn't look smug. He looked terrified. And Lena realized, with a sinking feeling in her chest, that she'd just made a very, very big mistake. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lena barely registered the speeches, the auction, the endless parade of wealthy people congratulating each other on their generosity. She kept expecting Alessandro Moretti to reappear, to demand something from her, to collect on whatever debt she'd just incurred by asking him for a favor. But he never came back. By the time Maya finally dragged her out of the ballroom and into a cab, Lena's head was pounding and her feet were screaming. She kicked off her heels the moment she got home, poured herself a glass of wine she didn't drink, and collapsed onto her couch. The business card sat on her coffee table, taunting her. She should throw it away. She should forget this whole night ever happened. She should... Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're welcome, by the way." Lena's heart stopped. She stared at the screen, her hands shaking. "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "You kissed me and you don't even know my number? I'm wounded. Alessandro." Lena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should delete the message. She should block the number. She should... How did you get my number? "I have my ways." Of course he did. Men like him always did. "What do you want?" The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. When the message finally came through, it was short and direct. "To see you again." Lena's breath caught in her throat. This was insane. She didn't know this man. She didn't know anything about him except what Maya had said, and what Maya had said was terrifying. She should say no. She should tell him to leave her alone. But when she thought about Julian's face, about the way he'd looked at her with such casual dismissal, about the way Alessandro had kissed her like she was the only person in the room. Why? Because you're interesting. And I don't find many people interesting. You don't even know me. I know you're brave enough to ask a stranger for a kiss in a room full of people who matter. I know you work in pediatric ICU, which means you care about helping people. I know your ex is an idiot, and I know you taste like champagne and regret. Lena's face flushed hot. She stared at the message, her pulse racing. This is a bad idea. Probably. I don't even know you, so get to know me. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. I can't. Why not? Because you're dangerous, Lena thought. Because Maya said you make people disappear. Because I just got out of one nightmare and I'm not stupid enough to walk into another. But what she typed was, I have a shift tomorrow night, then the night after. Alessandro. One dinner, Lena. What's the worst that could happen? She could think of about 1,000 answers to that question. But instead of typing any of them, she found herself typing, fine. One dinner. I'll pick you up at 8. Send me your address. Lena hesitated. Sending her address to a man Maya had called a crime boss seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. But then again, if he could get her phone number, he could probably get her address too. She sent it. See you then. Lena set her phone down and dropped her head into her hands. What had she just agreed to? What was she doing? But even as the question swirled in her mind, she couldn't shake the memory of his kiss, the way his hand had felt on her waist, the way he'd looked at her like she was something worth paying attention to. For the first time in months, Lena didn't feel invisible. And maybe that was worth the risk. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lena went through her shift on autopilot, checking vitals, administering medications, comforting frightened parents. She was good at her job. Great, even. It was the one area of her life where she felt competent, necessary, valued. But today, her mind kept wandering. Alessandro Moretti. She'd Googled him the night before, lying in bed with her phone glowing in the darkness. There were hundreds of results, articles about real estate deals, photos from charity events, speculation about his business interests, but nothing concrete, nothing that confirmed what Maya had said about him being connected. Still, there was something in those photos, something in the way he stood slightly apart from the crowd, the way other people seemed to orbit around him rather than approach him directly, an air of untouchability, of power that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. You okay? Lena looked up. Her colleague Jamie was watching her with concern. Yeah, sorry, just distracted. Man trouble? Lena laughed, though it came out brittle. Something like that. The ex? No, someone new. Jamie's eyebrows rose. New? That was fast. It's not like that. It's just dinner. Uh-huh. You've got that look. What look? The look that says it's definitely not just dinner. Jamie grinned. Is he hot? Lena thought about Alessandro's face, those dark eyes, that controlled intensity. Yeah, he's hot. Then what's the problem? The problem was that he might be a criminal. The problem was that she'd thrown herself at him out of desperation and humiliation. The problem was that she had no idea what she was getting herself into. But all she said was, no problem, just nervous. Don't be. You deserve something good, Lena. After everything with Julian, you deserve someone who treats you right. If only it were that simple. Shit. By the time her shift ended, Lena was exhausted. She went home, showered, and stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes trying to decide what to wear to dinner with a possible crime boss. Was there a dress code for that? Probably not one covered in fashion magazines. She finally settled on a deep blue dress, nicer than the black one from the gala, but not trying too hard. She did her makeup carefully, fixed her hair, and tried not to think about how ridiculous this all was. At exactly 8 o'clock, her phone buzzed. I'm outside. Lena took a deep breath, grabbed her purse, and headed downstairs. The car waiting at the curb was exactly what she'd expected, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows and a driver standing beside it. He opened the back door as she approached, and Lena slid inside. Alessandro was already there, dressed in a dark suit that fit him like it had been made for his body specifically. Probably because it had been. He looked up from his phone as she settled into the seat beside him, and something flickered in his eyes, Approval, maybe. Lena, he said, his voice low and smooth. You look beautiful. Thank you. The driver closed the door, and a moment later they were pulling away from the curb, gliding smoothly through the evening traffic. Where are we going? Lena asked. A restaurant I think you'll like, quiet, private, good food. You don't have to impress me. His lips curved into a slight smile. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to feed you. Lena found herself smiling back despite her nerves. Fair enough. They drove in silence for a few minutes, and Lena found herself studying him from the corner of her eye. In the dim light of the car, he looked even more imposing than he had at the gala. There was something about him that demanded attention, that made it impossible to look away. So, he said finally, breaking the silence, your friend told you who I am. It wasn't a question. She told me your name and that you're influential. Influential. He repeated the word like he was tasting it. That's diplomatic. Is it true? That I'm influential? Yes. That's not what I meant. Alessandro turned to look at her fully, his dark eyes meeting hers. What did your friend say exactly? Lena hesitated, but there didn't seem to be much point in lying. She said you're connected, that you make people disappear if they cross you. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. Why? It was the same question she'd been asking herself all day. Lena looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. Because I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of letting other people control my life, and because... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. Because? Alessandro prompted. Because when you kissed me, I felt like I mattered. The words hung in the air between them. Lena couldn't believe she'd said them out loud, but it was the truth, and she was too tired to pretend otherwise. Alessandro didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it before. You do matter. You don't know me well enough to say that. Then let me get to know you. He paused. And for the record, Lena, I don't make people disappear. I make problems disappear. There's a difference. Lena wasn't sure there was, but she didn't argue. The restaurant turned out to be a small Italian place tucked away on a quiet street in the West Village. The kind of place with no sign outside and a waiting list measured in months. But when Alessandro walked in, the maitre d' greeted him by name and led them immediately to a private table in the back. The food was incredible. Homemade pasta, perfectly cooked fish, wine that probably cost more than Lena's weekly paycheck. But what surprised her most was the conversation. Alessandro asked questions, real questions, about her work, her childhood, her dreams. He listened when she answered, his attention absolute and unwavering. He told her about growing up in New York, about his mother who died when he was young, about building his business from nothing. He didn't talk about the connected part, the criminal part, the dangerous part. And Lena didn't ask. By the time dessert arrived, she'd almost forgotten to be nervous, almost forgotten that this man might be everything Maya had warned her about. Can I ask you something? Lena said, setting down her fork. Anything. Why did you agree to kiss me? At the gala. You didn't know me. I was clearly desperate. Why help me? Alessandro was quiet for a moment, considering. You want the truth? Always. Because you were brave, and because your ex is a coward who doesn't deserve you, and because... He paused. Because I wanted to. That's it? You wanted to? I'm a simple man, Lena. When I want something, I take it. There was something in the way he said it that sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear exactly, something else, something that made her pulse quicken. And what do you want now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alessandro leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. To see you again. You're seeing me now. Again after this, and after that, until you tell me to stop. Lena's heart was racing. This was insane. She barely knew this man. She knew he was dangerous, that being involved with him was probably the worst decision she could make. But when she looked at him, all she could think about was the way he kissed her, the way he listened to her, the way he made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. Okay, she said. Okay? Yes. You can see me again. Alessandro smiled, a real smile this time. Not just the slight curve of his lips. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost boyish. "Good," he said. They left the restaurant an hour later and Alessandro walked her to the car, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. The driver was waiting, but Alessandro didn't immediately open the door. "I'll walk you up," he said. "You don't have to." "I want to." There was that phrase again. "I want to." Lena nodded, and they walked into her building together. The elevator ride to her floor was silent, charged with something Lena couldn't name. When they reached her door, she turned to face him. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "I had a really nice time." "So did I." They stood there for a moment, neither of them moving. Then Alessandro reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair back from her face. "Can I kiss you again?" he asked. Lena's breath caught. "You're asking this time?" "This time you're not desperate. This time you have a choice." She did have a choice. She could say no. She could step back, go inside, and never see him again. But she didn't want to. "Yes," she whispered. Alessandro kissed her the same way he had at the gala, slow, deliberate, devastating. His hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, and Lena melted into him, her hands finding his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath the expensive fabric. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Good night, Lena," he said, his voice rough. "Good night." He waited until she was inside, until he heard the lock click, before he turned and walked away. Lena leaned against the door, her heart pounding, her lips still tingling. She was in so much trouble, and she didn't even care. The following morning arrived with the kind of clarity that made everything from the night before feel like a fever dream. Lena stood in her kitchen, coffee cup halfway to her lips, staring at her phone where Alessandro's last text still glowed on the screen. Sweet dreams. He'd sent it at midnight, hours after he'd left her standing breathless against her apartment door. She'd read it 17 times before finally falling asleep, and now in the harsh light of day, she couldn't decide if she was thrilled or terrified. Probably both. Her phone rang, shattering the silence. Maya's name flashed across the screen. "Tell me you didn't sleep with him," Maya said the moment Lena answered. "Good morning to you too. Lena, tell me." "I didn't sleep with him. We had dinner. He walked me to my door. That's it." That wasn't entirely it. The kiss had been anything but innocent. But Maya didn't need to know that. "And you're seeing him again?" Lena hesitated. "Maybe." Maybe means yes. "Lena, I love you, but you're playing with fire here. Alessandro Moretti isn't some nice guy you met at a coffee shop. I know what he is." "Do you?" "Because I did some research last night, and what I found was not reassuring. There are rumors, Lena. Bad ones. Money laundering, racketeering, ties to families in Chicago and Boston. The FBI has been watching him for years, but nothing ever sticks because people are too scared to testify." Lena's stomach twisted. She'd known, on some level, that Alessandro was dangerous, but hearing it laid out so bluntly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "He's been nothing but respectful to me," she said quietly. "Of course he has. That's how it works. They're charming right up until they're not." Maya's voice softened. "I'm not trying to ruin this for you. I just don't want to see you get hurt, or worse. I'll be careful. Promise me." "I promise." But as Lena hung up and got ready for her shift, she wondered if careful was even possible with someone like Alessandro. Men like him didn't do careful. They did absolute. They did consuming. They did everything with the kind of intensity that left no room for halfway measures. And maybe that was exactly what scared her. Or maybe it was what drew her in. The pediatric ICU was busy that day, which was both a blessing and a curse. Lena threw herself into her work, grateful for the distraction. There was a new admission, a 3-year-old girl named Sophie with pneumonia, and Lena spent most of the morning getting her stabilized, monitoring her oxygen levels, talking softly to her terrified parents. This was what mattered. This was real. Not fancy dinners or dangerous men or kisses that made her forget her own name. But when her lunch break finally came and she checked her phone, there was a message waiting. "How's your day?" Simple, casual. As if he texted her every day, as if this was normal. Lena found herself smiling despite everything Maya had said. Busy. Yours? Boring without you. Her heart did a stupid little flip. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on flatterer, truth teller. There's a difference. Is there? With me, always. Lena didn't know how to respond to that, so she changed the subject. Thank you again for dinner. I really did have a nice time. The pleasure was mine. When can I see you again? I don't know. I work 12-hour shifts and my schedule is unpredictable. Then tell me when you're free and I'll make it work. There was something about the certainty in his words that made her breath catch, as if her schedule was the only thing that mattered, as if he'd rearrange his entire life to accommodate her shifts. I'm off Friday night. Friday it is. I'll pick you up at 7. Where are we going? It's a surprise. Lena was about to respond when Jamie poked her head into the break room. Hey, there's someone here to see you. Lena frowned. Who? Didn't give a name. Just said it was important. He's waiting in the lobby. He. Lena's stomach dropped. It couldn't be. But when she walked into the lobby, Julian was there, pacing near the reception desk. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, his face pale and drawn. When he saw her, he rushed forward. Lena, thank God. What are you doing here? Her voice came out colder than she'd intended, but she didn't care. I need to talk to you, please. It's important. I'm working. I know, but this can't wait. He glanced around nervously, as if expecting someone to jump out from behind the potted plants. Can we go somewhere private? Every instinct told her to say no, to turn around and walk away. But there was something in his expression, genuine fear, that made her hesitate. 5 minutes, she said. That's all you get. She led him to a small consultation room off the main hallway and closed the door. Julian immediately started pacing again, his hands shaking. What's going on? Lena demanded. You need to stay away from Alessandro Moretti. Lena's spine stiffened. Excuse me? I'm serious, Lena. Stay away from him. He's dangerous. That's rich coming from you. I know I have no right to tell you anything, but please just listen to me. Julian stopped pacing and turned to face her. Do you have any idea who he is? What he's capable of? I know exactly who he is. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. Julian ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in wild tufts. I saw you with him at the gala. I saw the way he looked at you, and then yesterday he called me. Lena's blood ran cold. What? He called me. On my private cell. I don't know how he got the number. He said... Julian's voice cracked. He said if I ever spoke to you again, if I ever came near you, if I so much as looked at you the wrong way, he'd make me regret it. He threatened you. Not exactly. He was very polite about it, very calm. But I could hear what he wasn't saying. Men like him don't make idle threats, Lena. They make promises. Lena didn't know what to feel. Anger that Alessandro had interfered. Relief that Julian was finally scared of something. Confusion about what any of this meant. Why do you care? She asked. You made it pretty clear at the gala that you've moved on. I do care. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but I don't want to see you get hurt worse. Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping. Moretti isn't just some rich guy with connections. He's the head of one of the biggest criminal organizations on the East Coast. His legitimate businesses are just fronts for money laundering. He has politicians in his pocket, judges on his payroll. People who cross him disappear, Lena. Actually disappear. You're being dramatic. I'm being realistic, and I'm telling you this because despite everything, I still... He stopped himself. Just stay away from him, please. My personal life is none of your business anymore. Lena, your 5 minutes are up. You need to leave. Julian stared at her for a long moment, his expression a mix of frustration and something that might have been genuine concern. Then he shook his head. Fine. But when things go bad, and they will go bad, don't say I didn't warn you. He left, and Lena stood alone in the consultation room, her thoughts spinning. She should be furious with Alessandro for threatening Julian. She should be scared by what Julian had said. She should walk away from all of this before it got any worse. But instead, she pulled out her phone. Did you threaten my ex? The response came within seconds. Define threaten. Julian said you called him. I did. And? And I made it clear that your well-being is important to me. If that constitutes a threat, then yes, I threatened him. Lena's hands were shaking as she typed. You had no right. Perhaps, but I don't regret it. Alessandro, he hurt you. He humiliated you. He doesn't get to do it again. That's not your decision to make. There was a longer pause this time. When the response came, it was a single word. Agreed. Then, a moment later, I apologize. I overstepped. Lena stared at the words. An apology? From a man who probably hadn't apologized for anything in years. Why did you really do it? Because the thought of him hurting you again made me want to break things. And I found it's better to make a phone call than to break things. Despite everything, Lena found herself smiling. That's probably wise. I have my moments. Are you angry? Was she? Lena tried to examine her feelings honestly. She should be angry. The rational part of her brain insisted she should be furious. But the truth was, a small secret part of her was pleased. Pleased that someone cared enough to protect her. Pleased that Julian was finally facing consequences for his actions. I should be. But you're not? I don't know what I am. That's fair. Friday's still on? Lena hesitated. This was her chance to back out, to listen to Maya's warnings and Julian's fears, to choose safety over whatever this dangerous thing with Alessandro was becoming. Friday's still on. Good. Now go save some lives. I'll talk to you later. Lena slipped her phone back into her pocket and returned to work, but she couldn't shake the conversation, or the implications. Alessandro Moretti had threatened her ex-boyfriend, had made it clear in whatever way he'd chosen to communicate it, that Lena was under his protection now, and she'd agreed to see him again anyway. The rest of the week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lena worked her shifts, came home exhausted, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what she was doing. She and Alessandro texted throughout the days, nothing heavy, just small exchanges. He'd ask about her patients, she'd ask about his meetings. He sent her a photo of his lunch once, and she sent back a picture of the terrible hospital cafeteria coffee. It was almost normal, almost like dating a regular person. Except nothing about Alessandro Moretti was regular. Maya called twice more to express her concerns, and Lena listened patiently, promised to be careful, and then did exactly what she'd planned to do anyway. By Friday evening, her nerves were strung so tight she could barely function. She changed outfits 4 times before settling on a burgundy dress that hugged her curves without being too obvious. She did her makeup carefully, taking extra time with her eyes. She wanted to look good, not desperate, not like she'd tried too hard, just good. At exactly 7 o'clock, her phone buzzed. Downstairs. Lena grabbed her purse, took one last look in the mirror, and headed down. The same black sedan was waiting, but this time when the driver opened the door, Alessandro stepped out. He was dressed more casually than before. Dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie. He looked younger this way, more approachable. But his eyes were the same, dark and intense, and when they landed on her, something in his expression shifted. "You look stunning," he said. "Thank you. You look nice too." "Nice," he smiled. "I'll take it." He held the door for her, and Lena slid into the car. Alessandro followed, settling into the seat beside her with that same easy grace. "So," Lena said as they pulled away from the curb, "are you going to tell me where we're going?" "We're going to my house." Lena's heart skipped. "Your house? I thought we could have dinner somewhere more private. Somewhere we can actually talk without worrying about who's watching or listening. But if that makes you uncomfortable, we can go to a restaurant instead." He was giving her a choice, an out. Lena appreciated that more than she could say. "Your house is fine," she said. Alessandro's house turned out to be a brownstone in the Upper East Side, tucked away on a tree-lined street that screamed old money and quiet power. The driver pulled up to the curb, and Alessandro led her up the steps to a pristine black door with brass fixtures. Inside was exactly what Lena had expected. Elegant, expensive, tasteful. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, artwork that probably cost more than her yearly salary. But it was also lived in. There were books on the shelves, a jacket tossed over the back of a chair, a half-empty glass of scotch on the coffee table. "Make yourself comfortable," Alessandro said. "Dinner should be ready in about 20 minutes. You cooked?" "I did." Lena raised an eyebrow. "The crime boss cooks?" "The man cooks," he corrected, a hint of amusement in his voice. "The crime boss part is negotiable." "Is it?" "No." He smiled. "But I appreciate you calling it negotiable." He disappeared into what Lena assumed was the kitchen, and she wandered through the living room examining the space. There were photos on the mantel. Alessandro with an older woman who had his eyes, Alessandro as a young man standing beside a vintage car, Alessandro shaking hands with people Lena didn't recognize but who looked important. "That's my mother," Alessandro said, emerging from the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine. He handed her one and gestured to the photo of the woman. "She died when I was 16. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." But something in his voice suggested it still hurt. They moved to the dining room, where the table was set with simple elegance. Alessandro brought out the food, homemade pasta with a rich tomato sauce, a crisp salad, bread that was still warm from the oven. "This is amazing," Lena said after the first bite. "Where did you learn to cook?" "My mother. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was only half a man." Alessandro poured more wine. "She had strong opinions about a lot of things. She sounds wonderful." "She was. She was also the only person who ever told me no and made it stick." Lena smiled. "I find that hard to believe." "That she told me no?" "That she was the only one." Alessandro's expression turned serious. "You tell me no, and I listen." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Lena set down her fork. "Julian came to see me," she said. "At the hospital. I know." "You know?" "I know a lot of things, Lena." "That's not creepy at all." "I didn't say it wasn't creepy. I said I know." Alessandro took a sip of wine. "What did he want?" "To warn me about you." "Smart man. Smarter than I gave him credit for." "He said you called him, made threats." "I made promises. There's a difference." "Is there?" "A threat is hypothetical. A promise is guaranteed." Lena leaned back in her chair, studying him. In the soft light of the dining room, Alessandro looked almost normal, like any successful businessman having dinner with a woman he was interested in. But there was steel beneath the surface. Control. Power that didn't need to be flaunted because it was simply understood. "Why are you interested in me?" she asked. "And don't say because I'm brave or interesting. I want the real reason." Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and honest. "Because you looked at me like I was a man, not a reputation. Because you asked me for help without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. Because when you found out, you didn't run." He paused. "And because when I kissed you, you kissed me back like you meant it." Lena's breath caught. "I did mean it. I know." "This is crazy. You know that, right? This whole thing is insane." "Probably. You're dangerous." "Yes." "People are afraid of you." "Yes." "I should walk away." "Probably." Alessandro set down his glass and leaned forward. "But you won't. You sound very sure of that." "I am." "Why?" "Because you're tired of being afraid. Because you want something more than the safe, predictable life you've been living. Because when you're with me, you feel alive in a way you haven't in a long time." His eyes locked on hers. "Am I wrong?" Lena wanted to say yes, wanted to tell him he was completely off base, but she couldn't because every word he'd said was true. "No," she whispered. "You're not wrong." Alessandro stood, moving around the table to where she sat. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena took it. He pulled her to her feet, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, smell the faint scent of his cologne. "I can't promise you safe," he said quietly. "I can't promise you easy. But I can promise you honest. I can promise you protected. And I can promise that as long as you're with me, no one, not your ex, not anyone, will ever make you feel small again." Alessandro, tell me to stop, and I will. Tell me this is too much, too fast, too dangerous, and I'll take you home right now and never contact you again. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. But if you want this, if you want me, then say yes. Lena's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. Every rational part of her brain was screaming at her to say no, to walk away, to choose safety over whatever this terrifying, exhilarating thing was. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was yes. Alessandro kissed her, and this time there was nothing controlled about it. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath, his hand sliding into her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. Lena melted against him, her own hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Alessandro, not like that. Just stay. Have dessert with me. Let me show you the rest of the house. Let me have a few more hours with you before you have to go back to the real world." Lena should say no. She should maintain some boundaries, some sense of self-preservation. But looking into his eyes, seeing the raw want there, she found herself nodding. "Okay, I'll stay." They ate dessert on the couch, some kind of chocolate thing Alessandro claimed he'd bought, but Lena suspected he'd made himself. They talked about everything and nothing, her childhood in Pennsylvania, his years building his business from the ground up, places they'd traveled, books they'd read. Alessandro showed her his library, a beautiful room lined floor to ceiling with books that looked actually read, not just decorative. He pulled down a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo and told her it was his favorite. "Revenge and redemption," he said. "What's not to love?" That's a very telling choice. I never claimed to be subtle. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. By the time Lena checked her phone, it was nearly midnight. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "I have an early shift tomorrow." Alessandro nodded, but she could see the disappointment in his eyes. He called for his driver, and they rode back to her apartment in comfortable silence, Alessandro's hand covering hers on the seat between them. When they pulled up to her building, he walked her to her door again. "Thank you for tonight," Lena said. "For dinner. For everything." "The pleasure was entirely mine." Alessandro's hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "When can I see you again?" "I work the next 4 days straight." "Then the day after that?" "Alessandro, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to, unless you're tired of me already." Lena laughed softly. "I'm not tired of you." "Then say yes." "Yes." He kissed her goodnight, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that promised more to come. When he finally pulled away, Lena was dizzy. "Sweet dreams, Lena." "You too." She watched him walk away, waited until the elevator doors closed behind him, then let herself into her apartment. She made it exactly 3 steps inside before her phone rang. Maya. "I'm fine," Lena said the moment she answered. "Did you see him tonight?" "Yes." "And?" "And I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Lena sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. "I like him, Maya." "I know I shouldn't. I know it's dangerous and stupid and probably going to end badly, but I really like him." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Is he good to you?" "Yes. And you're being careful." "As careful as I can be." Another pause. Then, "Okay." "Okay?" "I don't like it. I think you're playing with fire. But you're a grown woman and you get to make your own choices. Just promise me that if things get weird, if he scares you or hurts you or does anything that makes you uncomfortable, you'll tell me." "I promise." "And keep your location sharing on." "Maya, I'm serious. Keep it on. Call it insurance." Lena smiled despite herself. "Fine. Location sharing stays on." They talked for a few more minutes before Maya finally let her go. Lena got ready for bed, but sleep eluded her. She lay in the darkness, thinking about Alessandro's hands, Alessandro's mouth, Alessandro's promise that he'd keep her safe. The question was whether she needed safety from the world, or from him. Over the next 4 days, Lena threw herself into work with renewed focus. Sophie, the 3-year-old with pneumonia, was improving steadily, and Lena found herself spending extra time in her room, reading stories, singing songs, making the little girl laugh despite the tubes and monitors. Alessandro texted every day. Sometimes just a simple good morning, sometimes questions about her shift. Once, a photo of a sunset from what looked like a rooftop, with the caption, "Wish you were here." Lena saved that one. On her last shift, she was finishing up paperwork when Jamie appeared with a knowing smile. "Someone sent you flowers." "What?" Jamie led her to the nurse's station, where an enormous bouquet of white roses sat in a crystal vase. There had to be at least 3 dozen of them. Lena's hands shook slightly as she opened the card. "For bringing light to dark places." "A who's a?" Jamie demanded. "A friend." "A friend who sends 50 roses? Lena Carter, are you holding out on me?" Lena couldn't help but smile. "Maybe a little." She took the flowers home that night, setting them on her kitchen counter where she could see them. They were beautiful, excessive, and completely unnecessary, just like everything else about Alessandro Moretti. The next morning, Lena woke to find a text waiting. "I'm picking you up at noon. Wear something comfortable. Where are we going?" "You'll see." At exactly noon, the black sedan pulled up. But this time when Lena climbed in, Alessandro handed her a helmet. She stared at it. "What is this?" "Safety equipment." "Alessandro, trust me." 20 minutes later, they were standing in front of a private airfield, and Lena was staring at a sleek helicopter. "You're kidding." "I never kid about aviation." Alessandro took her hand, leading her toward the aircraft. "Have you ever been in a helicopter?" "No?" "Then you're in for a treat." The pilot, a quiet man Alessandro introduced as Marcus, helped them aboard. Alessandro secured Lena's seatbelt himself, his fingers lingering on her waist just a moment longer than necessary. "Where are we going?" Lena asked again as the rotors began to spin. Alessandro just smiled. They flew north over the city and into countryside that grew progressively more rural. Through the window, Lena watched forests and lakes slip by beneath them. It was beautiful, surreal, completely unexpected. After about 45 minutes, they began to descend. They landed in a clearing beside a pristine lake, surrounded by autumn trees ablaze with color. A picnic blanket was already spread out beneath an enormous oak, with a basket and champagne chilling in a bucket. "You did all this?" Lena asked as Alessandro helped her down from the helicopter. "I had help, but the idea was mine." They spent the afternoon by the lake, eating cheese and fruit and bread, drinking champagne, talking and laughing. Alessandro told her stories from his childhood, about the trouble he'd gotten into, the things his mother had taught him. Lena shared memories of nursing school, of her first code blue, of the moment she'd decided she wanted to work with children. "You're good at what you do," Alessandro said. "I can tell." "How?" "The way you talk about your patients, the way your whole face lights up when you're describing saving someone's life. That's not something you can fake." Lena looked out across the water. "It's the only thing I've ever been sure about. My career. Everything else in my life has been a mess. But when I'm at work, I know exactly who I am and what I'm supposed to do." "And when you're not at work?" She turned to look at him. "I'm still figuring that out." Alessandro reached out, his fingers threading through hers. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they lay on the blanket together, Alessandro's arm around her shoulders, Lena's head resting against his chest. "This is perfect," she murmured. "It is. I feel like I'm in a dream. If you are, I'm in it with you." Lena tilted her head back to look at him. His face was relaxed, softer than she'd seen it before. For this moment, he wasn't a crime boss or a feared man or anything except Alessandro. "Thank you for this," she said. "You're welcome. I mean it. This is the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me." Something flickered in Alessandro's eyes. "Then the men in your past were fools." "Just one man." And yes, he was. Alessandro's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her lower lip. "His loss is my gain." He kissed her as the sun set behind them, slow and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lena felt completely, perfectly happy. They flew back as darkness fell. the city lights spreading out below them like scattered diamonds. When they landed, Alessandro took her hand. I have one more stop. Alessandro, you've already indulged me. They drove to a building Lena didn't recognize, all glass and steel and modern architecture. Alessandro led her through a private entrance to a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. What is this place? Lena asked. Mine. I keep it for when I need somewhere quiet, somewhere separate from everything else. He turned to face her. I wanted to show it to you. The apartment was beautiful, minimalist, elegant, with artwork Lena suspected was worth a fortune. But what caught her attention was the view. From this height, the entire city spread out before them, alive with light and movement. Alessandro came to stand beside her at the window. I want you to have a key. Lena's heart stopped. What? A key to this place. I want you to have somewhere to go if you ever need space or quiet or just somewhere that's separate from your life and mine. He pulled a key from his pocket and held it out. I want you to have somewhere safe. Lena stared at the key. This was huge. This was trust, vulnerability, an admission that he wanted her in his life in a real, permanent way. Alessandro, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll use it when you need to. Say... He stopped, his jaw tightening. Say you'll stay. Stay? With me. In this, whatever this is. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in years, and I don't want to lose it. His hand closed around hers, folding her fingers over the key. I don't want to lose you. Lena looked up at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who was offering her something precious. Trust, safety, himself. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. This could end badly. It could. Alessandro's other hand came up to frame her face. But it could also be the best thing that ever happened to either of us. Lena stood there, the key warm in her palm, her heart pounding. She thought about Maya's warnings, about Julian's fears, about every rational reason she should walk away. And then she thought about the way Alessandro looked at her. The way he listened, the way he made her feel seen and valued and protected, the way he made her feel alive. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Alessandro kissed her then, deep and possessive, his hand sliding into her hair as he pulled her close. The key pressed between their palms, warm metal and shared promises, and Lena let herself fall into the moment, into him, into whatever dangerous thing this was becoming. When they finally broke apart, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. Stay tonight, he said. Here, with me. Lena's pulse jumped. Alessandro, just asleep. I want to wake up with you, that's all. It wasn't all. They both knew it wasn't all. But Lena found herself nodding anyway, because the thought of going back to her empty apartment felt wrong now, like stepping backward into a life that no longer fit. Okay, she whispered. Alessandro showed her the bedroom, gave her one of his shirts to sleep in, left her alone to change while he made some calls in the living room. Lena slipped into the soft cotton that smelled like him and climbed into the enormous bed, her heart racing. When Alessandro finally came to bed, he pulled her against him without a word, her back to his chest, his arm wrapped securely around her waist. Lena could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body, the solid reality of him. Thank you, she said into the darkness. For what? For being patient. For not pushing. Alessandro's lips brushed the back of her neck. I told you, Lena. I want you willing and sure. Everything else can wait. Lena fell asleep feeling safer than she had in years. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Alessandro was already up, standing by the window in dark slacks and an unbuttoned white shirt, talking quietly on his phone. When he noticed she was awake, he ended the call and brought her a cup of coffee, sitting on the edge of the bed. Good morning, he said, brushing hair back from her face. Morning. Lena took the coffee gratefully. What time is it? A little after 9. I have a meeting at 11, but there's no rush. They had breakfast together, and Alessandro's driver took her home around 10. Lena spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying every moment, every touch, every word. The key to Alessandro's apartment sat on her dresser, gleaming in the afternoon light. Maya called that evening, her voice tight with concern. "Where were you last night? Your location sharing showed you in some building in Midtown until this morning." Lena had forgotten about that. "I stayed at Alessandro's." "You what?" "We didn't. It wasn't like that. We just slept. Actually slept." "Lena, you barely know this man." "I know enough." "Do you? Do you really?" Maya's voice cracked slightly. "I'm worried about you. You're moving so fast with someone who's dangerous, and I feel like I'm watching you walk into traffic, and there's nothing I can do to stop you." Lena's chest tightened. "I know you're worried. I know this looks crazy from the outside, but Maya, he makes me happy. For the first time since Julian, I actually feel like myself again." "Or maybe you feel like who he wants you to be." The words hit harder than Maya probably intended. Lena sat down on her couch, suddenly exhausted. "That's not fair, isn't it? You've spent 2 weeks with this man, and you're already staying at his apartment, accepting keys, letting him dictate your social life. When was the last time you hung out with anyone besides him?" Lena opened her mouth to answer and realized she couldn't. Between her shifts and seeing Alessandro, she hadn't made time for anyone else. "I've been busy," she said weakly. "Too busy for your best friend? Too busy for your own life?" Maya's voice softened. "I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to make you see that you're losing yourself in this man, and that never ends well." They talked for another 20 minutes, and by the time they hung up, Lena felt unsettled. Was Maya right? Was she moving too fast, giving up too much? But then her phone buzzed with a text from Alessandro. "Missing you already. How was your day?" And just like that, the doubts faded. The next 2 weeks fell into a pattern. Lena worked her shifts, Alessandro ran his empire, and in between they carved out time for each other. Dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through Central Park. One memorable evening at the Symphony where Alessandro held her hand through the entire performance. He was careful with her, attentive in ways that made her heart ache. He learned how she took her coffee, which patients' cases kept her up at night, the exact tone of voice that meant she was exhausted and needed space. He sent flowers to the hospital. He made sure she ate on long shifts. He listened when she talked about her day with the kind of focused attention that made her feel like the most important person in the world. But there were things he didn't share. Phone calls he took in another room, meetings he wouldn't explain, attention that would occasionally cross his face when someone approached them in public, as if he was constantly calculating threats. Lena tried not to notice, tried not to ask questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Thursday, and Lena had just finished a particularly brutal shift. A 5-year-old boy had coded twice, and she'd spent 6 hours fighting to keep him alive while his parents sobbed in the waiting room. By the time she got home, she was physically and emotionally drained. She let herself into her apartment, kicked off her shoes, and had just collapsed on the couch when she noticed something wrong. The lamp on her side table was turned on. She always turned it off when she left. Lena's heart began to pound. She stood slowly, looking around the room. Everything else looked normal, nothing obviously out of place. Maybe she'd just forgotten this morning, been too distracted thinking about seeing Alessandro later. But then she noticed the books on her shelf. They were organized slightly differently than she'd left them. Not by much, just enough. Someone had been in her apartment. Lena's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and dialed Alessandro. He answered on the first ring. "Lena, what's wrong?" "Someone was in my apartment." "Are you sure?" "Yes. Things are moved, small things, but I notice. Alessandro, someone was here." "Get out. Right now. Don't touch anything. Go downstairs and wait in the lobby. I'm sending someone to get you." "Alessandro?" "Now, Lena, please." She grabbed her purse and left, her pulse racing. In the lobby, she stood by the doorman's desk, trying to look calm while her mind spun. Who would break into her apartment? Why? Nothing seemed to be stolen. A black SUV pulled up 10 minutes later. 2 men got out, both wearing suits that did nothing to hide their intimidating builds. The taller one approached her. "Miss Carter, Mr. Moretti sent us. I'm Marcus. This is Enzo. We're going to take you somewhere safe, and then we're going to check your apartment." "I should call the police." "Mr. Moretti is handling it." Something about the way he said it made Lena think the police wouldn't be involved at all. But she was too shaken to argue. She let them guide her into the SUV, and they drove in silence to the penthouse Alessandro had given her a key to. Alessandro was waiting when they arrived, his face set in hard lines. He pulled Lena into his arms the moment she stepped through the door. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, just scared." He held her for a long moment, then stepped back to look at her. "Marcus and Enzo are going to sweep your apartment. In the meantime, you're staying here." "For how long?" "Until I know you're safe." "Alessandro, what's going on? Why would someone break into my apartment?" His jaw tightened. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." He made her sit, brought her tea she didn't drink, and made phone calls in low, tense Italian while she tried to process what was happening. An hour later, Marcus and Enzo returned. The apartment was clean, Marcus reported. No signs of forced entry. Whoever it was had a key or picked the lock without leaving marks. Professional. "Did they take anything?" Alessandro asked. "Nothing obvious. Looks like they were searching for something specific. Went through her drawers, her closet, her desk. But they were careful. Tried to put everything back the way they found it." Lena's stomach turned. Someone had gone through her things. Her clothes, her personal items. The violation felt worse than if they'd just stolen something and left. "What about surveillance?" Alessandro asked. "We're pulling footage from the building now. Should have something in a few hours." Alessandro dismissed them, and then it was just the two of them in the quiet apartment. He came to sit beside her, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. "I need you to think carefully. Has anyone been following you? Anyone watching you at work or on the street? Anything unusual at all in the past few weeks?" Lena tried to think back. "No, nothing. I don't think so." "What about your ex, Julian? Have you seen him since he came to the hospital?" "No, he hasn't contacted me at all." Alessandro's expression darkened. "I'm going to have him checked out anyway." "You think Julian did this?" "I think Julian is the kind of man who makes stupid decisions when he's desperate. And I know he owes money to people who don't take kindly to unpaid debts." "What kind of people?" Alessandro hesitated, and Lena saw him weighing how much to tell her. Finally, he sighed. "The kind of people I try to keep away from civilians. The kind of people who would see you as leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For me." The words hung in the air between them. Lena pulled her hands away, her chest tight. "So this is about you. Someone came into my apartment because of you." "I don't know that for certain. But it's possible." "Yes, it's possible." Lena stood, needing to move, needing to put distance between them. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights that suddenly felt more threatening than beautiful. "I knew this was dangerous," she said quietly. "I knew getting involved with you was risky. But I thought the danger would be abstract, theoretical, not someone breaking into my home." Alessandro came to stand behind her, not touching her but close enough that she could feel him. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was rough with an emotion she'd never heard from him before. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better." "You can't protect me from everything." "I can try." Lena turned to face him. In the dim light, Alessandro looked older, the lines around his eyes more pronounced. He looked tired, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Tell me the truth," she said. "All of it. What you do. Who you are. What being with you really means." Alessandro held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but you might not like what you hear." They sat on the couch, and Alessandro told her everything. About his father, who'd run one of the smaller organized crime families in New York until he was killed in a power struggle when Alessandro was 19. About how Alessandro had taken over, consolidated power, eliminated rivals, and built an empire that straddled the line between legitimate business and the kind of operations that never saw daylight. He told her about the money laundering through his real estate holdings, the protection rackets, the gambling operations, the politicians and judges he had in his pocket, the violence he'd authorized when necessary, the men who'd disappeared because they'd threatened his empire. He told her about the FBI investigations that had gone nowhere because he was too careful, too smart, too protected, about the delicate balance he maintained between different factions, different families, different interests. And he told her about the enemies, the rivals who'd love nothing more than to find a weakness they could exploit, the federal prosecutors who saw him as the big case that would make their careers, the men from his past who still wanted revenge for old grievances. When he finished, silence filled the apartment. Lena sat very still, processing everything she'd just heard. It was one thing to suspect, another thing entirely to know. "Say something," Alessandro finally said. "I don't know what to say. Tell me you're leaving. Tell me you can't do this. Tell me I'm a monster." His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched. "Just tell me something." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd been nothing but gentle with her, who'd protected her from Julian, who'd given her keys and promises and the first real happiness she'd felt in years. This man who also ordered violence like other people ordered coffee. "Are you a monster?" she asked quietly. Alessandro considered the question seriously. "By some definitions, yes. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices most people couldn't live with. I've hurt people who probably didn't deserve it. Do you regret it?" "Some of it, not all of it." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I won't lie to you, Lena. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. This is who I am. This is the world I live in, and if you stay with me, it becomes your world too. And if I can't handle that, then I'll make sure you're safe, and I'll walk away. I won't force you into this life." Lena stood again, pacing the room. Her mind was reeling. Everything Maya had said, everything Julian had warned her about, it was all true. Alessandro Moretti was exactly as dangerous as everyone had claimed, but he'd also been honest with her. Brutally, completely honest in a way Julian never had been. He wasn't hiding who he was or pretending to be better than he was. He was laying it all out and letting her decide. "I need time," she said finally. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need, but you're staying here until I know who broke into your apartment and why." "Alessandro, that's non-negotiable. Your safety is non-negotiable." Lena wanted to argue, but she was too exhausted. And truthfully, she didn't want to go back to her apartment knowing someone had been there, touching her things, invading her space. "Okay, I'll stay tonight, but tomorrow we'll talk. Tonight you need rest." Alessandro showed her to the guest room this time, giving her space. But before he left, he turned back. "Lena, whatever you decide, I want you to know, being with you these past few weeks has been the best thing to happen to me in years. You make me want to be better. And if you walk away, I'll understand. But I'll also regret losing you for the rest of my life." He left before she could respond, and Lena stood alone in the guest room, her world tilted on its axis. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her apartment, imagined strange hands going through her belongings. She thought about Alessandro's confession, about the weight of what he'd told her. She thought about Maya's warnings and Julian's fears, and her own common sense telling her to run. But she also thought about the way Alessandro looked at her, the way he listened, the way he made her feel protected and valued and seen, the way he'd been nothing but honest even when the truth made him look bad. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for water. Alessandro was there, sitting at the island with a glass of scotch and a tablet, going through what looked like security footage. He looked up when she entered. "Can't sleep?" "No, you?" "I don't sleep much anyway." He gestured to the stool beside him. "Want some company in your insomnia?" Lena sat, and he poured her a small glass of scotch. She took a sip, letting the burn ground her. "Did you find anything?" she asked, nodding toward the tablet. "Maybe. There's a man who entered your building 4 hours before you got home. He had a key, walked in like he belonged there, but the camera angle isn't great. I can't make out his face." He turned the tablet so she could see. The footage showed a figure in a baseball cap and dark jacket, head down, moving through the lobby with purpose. "Could it be someone who lives there?" Lena asked. "We're checking, but I don't think so." Alessandro took another sip of scotch. "I think this was a professional job. Someone looking for something specific." "What could they possibly want from me? I don't have anything valuable." "Not valuables. Information." Alessandro set down his glass. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Julian ever given you anything to hold for him? Papers, a flash drive, anything like that? Lena frowned, thinking back. No, why would he? Because Julian Reed is in trouble, serious trouble. He owes significant money to a loan shark named Viktor Kozlov. Kozlov is Russian mob, and he doesn't play nice when people don't pay up. How much money? $200,000 plus interest. Lena's jaw dropped. 200? How did Julian even accumulate that much debt? Gambling. High-stakes poker games he had no business being in. He's been trying to win back his losses for months, and he's only dug himself deeper. How do you know all this? Alessandro gave her a look. Because it's my business to know. And because when Julian came sniffing around you, I made it my business to know everything about him. Lena didn't know whether to be grateful or disturbed by that. What does this have to do with someone breaking into my apartment? I think Julian told Kozlov about you, either as a stalling tactic or because he thought you might have something valuable, something he could use to pay off his debt. Alessandro's expression darkened. And now Kozlov's people are looking. But I don't have anything. I know, but Kozlov doesn't, and he's not going to just take your word for it. The implication settled over Lena like a cold blanket. She was in danger, real danger, because her idiot ex-fiancé had gambled away money he didn't have and dragged her into his mess. What do I do? She asked quietly. You let me handle it. Alessandro, I'm serious, Lena. This is what I do. This is my world. Let me handle it. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could take care of herself, but the truth was, she had no idea how to deal with Russian mobsters and loan sharks and break-ins. Alessandro did. Okay, she said finally, but I want to know what you're doing. No more secrets. No more secrets, Alessandro agreed. They sat in silence for a few minutes, Lena processing everything while Alessandro continued reviewing footage. Finally, she asked the question that had been nagging at her since his confession. Do you want out? Alessandro looked up, confused. Out of what? This life. The crime, the violence, the constant danger. If you could walk away from it all, would you? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. 5 years ago, I would have said no without hesitation. This is all I've ever known. My father's world, his father's world. It's in my blood. He paused. But lately I've been thinking about what it would be like to just be a businessman. To wake up without wondering who's trying to kill me. To build something legitimate that I could be proud of. What changed? Alessandro looked directly at her. You did. Lena's heart skipped. Me? You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. A normal life. A future that doesn't end with a bullet or a prison cell. Someone to come home to who isn't afraid of me. His hand reached out, covering hers. You make me want to be better. I can't be your redemption, Alessandro. That's too much pressure. I'm not asking you to redeem me. I'm just saying you make me want to try. Lena turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. What would walking away even look like? Can you just quit being a crime boss? It's complicated. There are obligations, territories, agreements with other families. You can't just retire without consequences. Alessandro's jaw tightened. But there are ways, gradual transitions, passing control to someone else, legitimizing operations over time. It would take years and it wouldn't be easy, but it's possible. Would you do it, if you could? If I had a reason to. If I had something worth walking away for. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Would you be that reason, Lena? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Lena felt the weight of it, the enormity of what he was asking. He wasn't just asking her to stay with him. He was asking her to be the catalyst for changing his entire life. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. You're stronger than you think. Am I? Because right now I feel terrified. Someone broke into my apartment because of their connection to me. Because your world is bleeding into mine, and I don't know if I can live like this, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if I'm safe. Alessandro's expression tightened with something that looked like pain. You're right. You deserve better than this. You deserve someone who doesn't bring danger to your door, someone normal, safe, boring. I don't want boring. Then what do you want? Lena looked at him, at this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly vulnerable man who'd somehow worked his way into her heart in just a few weeks. I want you, she said quietly. But I want the version of you that doesn't come with break-ins and threats and violence. I want the man who cooks me dinner and takes me to the symphony and holds me while I sleep. I want... She stopped, frustrated. I want something that might not exist. It could exist if you give me time. Alessandro's grip on her hand tightened. I can't change overnight, but I can start making different choices. I can start moving away from the worst of it. If you'll stay, if you'll be patient, I can become the man you deserve. And what if you can't? What if this life won't let you go? Then I'll do everything in my power to keep you separate from it, to keep you safe, even if it means keeping you at a distance. Lena's eyes burned. She didn't want distance. She didn't want safe and separate. She wanted all of him, the good and the bad, the gentle and the dangerous. But she also didn't want to end up like the women she'd read about in news articles, collateral damage in someone else's war. I need time, she said again. I need to think about what I can handle, what I'm willing to risk. I understand. Alessandro brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, you're staying here where I know you're safe. For how long? Until I resolve the situation with Kozlov and Julian. Until I know for certain who broke into your apartment and why. Until there's no threat hanging over you. His eyes met hers, dark and fierce. I know you value your independence. I know you don't like feeling controlled. But Lena, I can't lose you. I won't lose you. Not to Kozlov, not to anyone. So please, just let me keep you safe while I fix this. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she didn't need protecting, but she was exhausted, scared, and truthfully grateful not to be alone right now. Okay, she said, but you have to tell me what you're doing. Every step. No keeping me in the dark to protect me. Deal. They sat there until the scotch was gone and the sky began to lighten outside the windows. Finally, Alessandro stood and held out his hand. Come on, you need rest, even if you can't sleep. He led her back to the guest room, but didn't leave this time. Instead, he lay down beside her on top of the covers, fully clothed, and pulled her against his chest. Sleep, he murmured. I'll keep watch. And somehow, wrapped in his arms with his heart beating steady beneath her ear, Lena finally drifted off. When she woke hours later, Alessandro was gone. But there was a note on the nightstand. Had to take care of some things. Marcus is outside if you need anything. Help yourself to whatever you want. I'll be back by dinner. Elena showered and borrowed clothes from the closet Alessandro had apparently stocked with things in her size. The gesture should have been creepy, but somehow it wasn't. It was thoughtful, prepared. Very Alessandro. She spent the day restless, pacing the apartment, trying to work but unable to focus. She called the hospital and told them she needed a few personal days. She texted Maya a carefully edited version of what was happening. She tried to read, to watch TV, to do anything to distract herself from the growing sense that her life was spiraling out of control. Alessandro returned at 6, looking tired but satisfied. It's done, he said. What's done? Julian's debt. I paid it off. Lena stared at him. You what? $200,000 plus interest. I paid Viktor Kozlov everything Julian owed him. In exchange, Kozlov agreed to leave you alone. Permanently. Alessandro, you can't just... That's a lot of money. It's nothing, a rounding error. What matters is you're safe now. What about Julian? Alessandro's expression hardened. Julian and I are going to have a conversation. He's going to explain exactly what he told Kozlov about you, and he's going to make it very clear to everyone that you have no value as leverage. Then he's going to disappear for a while, maybe permanently if I don't like what he has to say. You can't kill him. I won't kill him, but I can make his life very uncomfortable. Alessandro moved closer, his hands framing her face. He put you in danger, Lena. He used you as a bargaining chip to save his own skin. That's not something I can let slide. He's an idiot and a coward, but he deserves exactly what he gets. But because you're asking, I'll be merciful. I'll just scare him. Make sure he understands the consequences of ever mentioning your name again. Lena should have been horrified, should have been appalled that Alessandro was planning to threaten Julian. But a small, vindictive part of her was pleased. Julian had betrayed her again, put her in actual danger, and now he was finally going to face real consequences. When? She asked. Tomorrow. Tonight, I want to focus on you. Alessandro's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Have you thought about what I said? About us? I haven't thought about anything else. And? Lena took a deep breath. I want to try. I want to see if this can work. But Alessandro, I need you to understand, I can't live in fear. I can't spend my life wondering if every stranger on the street is a threat. If we're going to do this, you need to actually start pulling back from the dangerous parts of your business. Not someday. Now. Done. Just like that? Just like that. I'll start making calls tomorrow. Start transitioning operations to people I trust. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. His hand slid down to her shoulders, his grip firm. For you, I'll do it. Because the thought of losing you is worse than the thought of losing everything else. Lena searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, but all she saw was absolute certainty. Okay, she said, then I'm in, all the way. But Alessandro, what? If this goes wrong, if you can't walk away, or if someone comes after me again, I'm out. I'll disappear so fast you won't even see me go. I won't live my life as a target. Fair enough, but it won't come to that. I won't let it. He kissed her then, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that spoke of fear and relief and desperate need. Lena kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, and Lena finally let herself have what she'd been wanting since the night of the gala. Alessandro worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, taking his time, learning every curve and hollow, every spot that made her gasp. And when they finally came together, it felt like more than just physical pleasure. It felt like a promise, like a commitment to seeing this through, whatever came next. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, Alessandro's fingers tracing lazy patterns on her skin. I meant what I said, he murmured. I'll change for you. Don't change completely, Lena said, tilting her head to look at him. I like you the way you are, just maybe with less murder. Alessandro laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Less murder. I can work with that. Lena fell asleep feeling hopeful for the first time in days. Like maybe, just maybe, this dangerous, impossible thing might actually work out. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that nothing involving Alessandro Moretti would ever be simple. And tomorrow, when he confronted Julian, she was going to find out just how complicated things could get. The morning arrived with cold precision. Lena woke to find Alessandro already dressed, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. His posture was different than it had been the night before, harder, more controlled. This wasn't the man who'd held her tenderly in the darkness. This was the other Alessandro, the dangerous one. He ended the call and turned to find her watching him. I have to go handle the Julian situation, he said. I want you to stay here. I want to come with you. Alessandro's expression flickered with surprise, then hardened into something unreadable. No. He dragged me into this mess. I deserve to be there when you confront him. Lena, what I'm about to do isn't something you should see. Why? Because you don't want me to know what you're really capable of? Lena sat up, pulling the sheet around her. You said no more secrets. You said I could know everything. Or was that just talk? Alessandro crossed the room, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone in that gesture she was coming to recognize as his way of grounding himself. It wasn't just talk, but there's a difference between knowing what I do and watching me do it. I don't want you to look at me differently after. I already know who you are. Knowing and seeing aren't the same thing. Lena held his gaze. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to be with you, I need to understand all of it, not just the parts you think I can handle. Take me with you. Let me see. Alessandro studied her for a long moment, something like admiration crossing his features. You're serious? Completely. You might not like what you see. Probably not, but I'd rather see the truth than live with sanitized versions of it. He was quiet, clearly weighing the decision. Finally, he nodded. All right, but you stay back. You don't interfere, and if I tell you to leave, you leave. Agreed? Agreed. An hour later, they were in the back of Alessandro's SUV, Marcus driving, while Enzo sat in the passenger seat. The atmosphere in the car was tense, businesslike. Alessandro had transformed completely, his expression cold, his movements economical, every inch the crime boss Maya had warned her about. Where are we going? Lena asked quietly. A warehouse in Red Hook, neutral territory. Julian will be there waiting. Will he come willingly? Marcus and Enzo picked him up an hour ago. They were very persuasive. Lena's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd asked for this. She needed to see it through. The warehouse was exactly what she'd imagined. Concrete floors, high ceilings, the smell of oil and rust. Julian was there, sitting in a metal chair in the center of the space, his hands zip-tied behind his back. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. When he saw Alessandro, that fear intensified into something close to panic. Then he saw Lena, and his expression crumpled. Lena, thank God. Tell him I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Tell him, she's not here to save you, Alessandro said, his voice flat and cold. She's here to listen to you explain exactly how you put her in danger. Julian's mouth opened and closed. I wouldn't. Alessandro nodded to Marcus, who produced a tablet and pulled up security footage. It showed Julian sitting across from a heavy-set man with Slavic features, Viktor Kozlov, Lena assumed, in what looked like a private room in a club. Marcus hit play, and Julian's voice filled the warehouse. I'm telling you, she has access to things. Her new boyfriend is Alessandro Moretti. You know who that is. If she's with him, she's got to have information, access to accounts, something valuable. Kozlov's voice responded, thick with accent. And why would she help you? She doesn't have to help me. You just need to search her place, see what she's got. Use it as leverage, whatever. I'm just saying, she's connected to someone with deep pockets now. The footage cut off. Lena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Julian hadn't just mentioned her to save himself. He'd actively suggested she be used as leverage. He'd pointed Kozlov directly at her. I didn't mean it like that, Julian stammered. I was desperate. Kozlov was threatening to kill me. I just needed to give him something, anything. So you gave him Lena. Alessandro's voice was still eerily calm, but Lena could see the fury in the set of his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. You told a violent criminal that she was connected to me. You suggested she had access to valuable information. You painted a target on her back to save your own skin. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Lena. I never thought... You never thought, Alessandro interrupted. That's your problem. You don't think. You just act on impulse and let other people deal with the consequences. He walked slowly toward Julian, and with each step, Julian seemed to shrink further into himself. I paid your debt, Alessandro said. All 200,000 plus interest. Do you know why? Julian shook his head mutely. Because Lena asked me not to kill you. Because despite everything you've done to her, she's still too kind to want you dead. Alessandro stopped directly in front of Julian's chair, looking down at him with cold contempt. But her kindness only extends so far, and my patience is much shorter. What do you want from me? I want you to understand something very clearly. Lena is under my protection. That means she's untouchable. If you speak to her, look at her, think about her, I'll know, and there will be consequences. Alessandro leaned down, his face inches from Julian's. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. I don't think you do. Alessandro straightened and nodded to Enzo, who stepped forward with a folder. This is everything I know about you, Julian. Your apartment lease, your bank accounts, your mother's address in Connecticut, your sister's new job in Boston, every place you go, every person you care about. Julian's face went sheet white. I'm not threatening your family, Alessandro continued. I don't hurt civilians who haven't earned it, but I want you to understand how easily I could, how completely I own your life right now. You exist because I allow it. You breathe because Lena asked me to let you. I get it. I swear I get it. Good. Then here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave New York. Tonight. You're going to move somewhere far away and start over. Chicago, maybe? Or Los Angeles? Somewhere I don't have to see your face. Alessandro's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. And you're going to forget Lena exists. You're going to forget you ever knew her. Because if I hear that you've contacted her, if I hear that you've mentioned her name to anyone, if I even hear a rumor that you've been talking about her, I will reconsider my merciful mood. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. Marcus will give you $10,000 cash. That's more than generous considering what you deserve. Alessandro stepped back. Use it wisely, start a new life, and be grateful you're getting the chance. Julian looked at Lena, his eyes pleading. Lena, please, you can't just let him... Let him what? Lena found her voice, though it came out harder than she expected. Let him save your life? Let him pay your debts? Let him give you a second chance you absolutely don't deserve. You're really with him? After everything I told you about who he is? Yes, I'm with him. Because unlike you, he's never lied to me. He's never cheated on me. And he's never thrown me to wolves to save himself. Lena moved closer, her anger finally breaking through. You want to know the difference between you and Alessandro? He's dangerous, yes. He's done terrible things. But he would never, ever betray someone he cared about. You betrayed me twice, once with another woman, and once by using me as collateral for your gambling debts. So yes, Julian, I'm really with him, and you need to leave and never come back. Julian stared at her like he didn't recognize her. Maybe he didn't. Maybe she didn't recognize herself anymore either. Cut him loose, Alessandro told Marcus. Give him the money and put him on a train out of the city. Make sure he actually leaves. Marcus pulled out a knife and cut the zip ties. Julian rubbed his wrists, still looking between Lena and Alessandro like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. This isn't over, he said quietly. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. What did you just say? I said... Julian stopped himself, seeming to realize the stupidity of making threats. Nothing. I said nothing. Smart choice. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about letting you live. Marcus and Enzo escorted Julian out, leaving Lena and Alessandro alone in the warehouse. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lena let out a shaky breath. Are you all right? Alessandro asked, his voice gentler now. I don't know. That was... She couldn't find the words. More than you expected? Different than I expected. Lena looked at him, this man who'd just calmly threatened her ex-boyfriend with such controlled precision. You were so calm, so cold. Would you have preferred I beat him? Raged at him? No, I don't know. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. I knew you were dangerous, but seeing it, seeing how easily you control people, how much power you have, it's a lot to process. Alessandro moved toward her slowly, like approaching a skittish animal. Do I scare you now? Lena considered the question honestly. A little, but not in the way you think. I'm not afraid you'll hurt me. I'm afraid of how much power you have, how easily you could ruin someone's life. It's a lot of responsibility. It is, and I don't take it lightly. Don't you? You just forced Julian to leave the city. I gave him a choice. Leave voluntarily with money or refuse and face the alternative. He chose wisely. Alessandro's hand reached out, not quite touching her. Lena, I know this is hard to understand, but in my world, showing mercy is dangerous. If people think you're soft, they take advantage. Julian needed to understand that there are real consequences for his actions. And what about the people who cross you? The ones who don't have me asking you to spare them? Alessandro's jaw tightened. They get what they deserve, which is whatever I decide is appropriate for their crimes. The honesty should have terrified her. Instead, Lena found herself appreciating it. He wasn't trying to soften the truth or make himself look better. He was showing her exactly who he was. I need some air, she said. They walked out of the warehouse into the cold morning. The waterfront stretched out before them, industrial and gray. Lena breathed in the sharp air, trying to settle her thoughts. Thank you for letting me come, she said finally. I thought you'd regret it. Maybe I will, but right now, I'm just processing. She turned to look at him. You paid $200,000 to keep me safe. I would have paid 10 times that. Why? We've only known each other a few weeks. Alessandro was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the water. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because in those few weeks, you've made me feel more human than I have in years. Because you look at me and see Alessandro, not just the Moretti name and everything that comes with it. Because when I'm with you, I remember there's more to life than power and control and violence. He turned to face her fully. Because I'm falling in love with you, Lena, and I would burn the entire city down before I let anything happen to you. Lena's breath caught. Love. He'd said love. Alessandro, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. But the thing was, Lena realized, she felt it too. Against all logic, against all reason, against every warning sign and red flag, she was falling for this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man. I'm falling for you too, she said quietly. And it terrifies me. Good. It should terrify you. I terrify myself sometimes. Lena laughed despite everything, and Alessandro smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Come on, he said, taking her hand. Let's get out of here. I need to make some calls, start the process of stepping back from certain operations. And you need to decide if you want to go back to your apartment or keep staying at the penthouse. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. They drove back through the city, and Lena watched the streets pass by, thinking about the choice ahead of her. Going back to her apartment meant trying to reclaim her normal life. Staying at the penthouse meant accepting that her life had fundamentally changed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Are you okay? You've been radio silent for days and I'm worried. Lena typed back quickly. I'm fine. Some stuff happened, but it's handled now. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Yes, please. I miss you. Miss you too. Maya? Alessandro asked, glancing at her phone. Yeah, she's worried. I haven't exactly been the best friend lately. You should see her, have coffee, talk, maintain your relationships outside of this. Alessandro's hand found hers. I don't want to be your whole world, Lena. I want to be part of it. The words settled something in her chest. He understood. He got it. Back at the penthouse, Alessandro disappeared into his office to make calls while Lena stood at the windows, looking out at the city. Her city. The place where she'd built her career, her life, her identity. And now it was also the place where she was building something with Alessandro. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Lena Carter? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Yes? This is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I'd like to speak with you about Alessandro Moretti. Lena's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Miss Carter, we know you've been seeing Mr. Moretti. We've been monitoring his activities for some time, and we believe you may have information that could help our investigation. I don't have any information. We're prepared to offer you protection. Immunity from prosecution for any involvement in Mr. Moretti's business operations. All we need is your cooperation. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. I'm not interested. Miss Carter, please understand the position you're in. Alessandro Moretti is a dangerous man involved in serious criminal activity. If you're knowingly involved with him, you could face charges. We're offering you a way out. I said I'm not interested. Don't contact me again. She hung up, her hands shaking. The FBI. Of course. Alessandro had said they'd been investigating him for years, but hearing it directly, being contacted directly, made it real in a terrifying way. Alessandro appeared in the doorway, his expression sharp. Who was that? FBI, Special Agent Sarah Chen. She wants me to cooperate with their investigation into you. Alessandro's jaw clenched, but his voice remained calm. What did you tell her? That I'm not interested and not to contact me again. Lena, you should have talked to them. She stared at him in shock. What? I'm serious. If the FBI is offering you a deal, you should take it. Get immunity. Distance yourself from me. It's the smart play. I don't want to distance myself from you. You might not have a choice. If they're contacting you directly, it means they think they're close to building a case. They want you to flip on me, give them information they can use. Alessandro moved closer, his expression intense. I won't let you go down for my crimes. If they offer you a deal, take it. And betray you? It's not betrayal if I'm telling you to do it. Lena shook her head firmly. No, I'm not going to help them build a case against you. I'm not going to be the reason you end up in prison. Lena, no, Alessandro, listen to me. I chose this. I chose you, knowing who you are and what you do. I'm not going to turn on you the first time things get difficult. She grabbed his hands, holding tight. We're in this together. That's what you said. So we figure it out together. Alessandro looked at her like she'd just offered him something precious and fragile. You're sure? I'm sure. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. Definitely both. He pulled back enough to look at her. The FBI contact changes things. We need to be more careful. They'll be watching you now, watching us together. Everything we do will be scrutinized. So what do? We act normal. We don't give them anything they can use. And I accelerate my timeline for transitioning out of the illegal operations. Alessandro's expression hardened with determination. I meant what I said about changing, about building something legitimate. The FBI contact just made it more urgent. Over the next week, Alessandro threw himself into restructuring his empire. Lena watched as he met with lawyers, accountants, other men in expensive suits who spoke in careful euphemisms about territory and operations and transitions of power. He was dismantling the criminal side of his business piece by piece, moving money into legitimate investments, passing control of certain operations to trusted associates. It was fascinating and terrifying to watch. This was a man who'd built an empire through violence and intimidation, and he was walking away from it, for her. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on Lena's shoulders. She went back to work, returning to her shifts at the hospital with a strange sense of displacement. Her colleagues welcomed her back, asked about her time off, and Lena gave vague answers about family issues. She threw herself into patient care, grateful for the normalcy of it. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Whether it was FBI surveillance or her own paranoia, she couldn't tell. She met Maya for coffee on her day off, and her best friend took one look at her and frowned. You look exhausted. I am exhausted. Things with Alessandro? Things with everything. Lena stirred her coffee absently. The FBI contacted me. They want me to help them investigate Alessandro. Maya's eyes went wide. What did you tell them? That I wasn't interested. Lena, are you insane? If the FBI is investigating him, I know what it means, but I'm not going to betray him. Maya leaned forward, her voice urgent and low. This isn't about loyalty or love or whatever you think you feel for him. This is about your life, your career, your freedom. If you get caught up in his crimes, you could lose everything. I know the risks. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're so caught up in this relationship that you can't see how dangerous it is. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. For the first time in my life, I'm making choices based on what I want, not what's safe or sensible or expected. Lena met Maya's eyes. I know you're worried. I know this looks crazy, but Alessandro is trying to change. He's getting out of the criminal side of his business. He's doing it for me. And what if he can't? What if the FBI gets him anyway? What happens to you then? I don't know, but I'd rather face that possibility than walk away from the best thing that's happened to me in years. Maya sat back, shaking her head. I can't support this, Lena. I can't sit here and watch you destroy your life. I'm not asking you to support it. I'm asking you to trust that I know what I'm doing. But you don't know what you're doing. You're in love with a criminal who's probably going to end up in prison or dead, and you're willing to risk everything for him. That's not love. That's self-destruction. The words stung, probably because part of Lena feared they might be true. But another part of her, the part that had grown stronger since meeting Alessandro, refused to accept that characterization. Maybe it is, Lena said quietly. Or maybe it's the first time I've ever fought for something that matters. Either way, it's my choice to make. They parted on tense terms, and Lena went back to the penthouse feeling bruised and uncertain. Alessandro was there, working at his laptop at the kitchen island. He took one look at her face and closed the computer. What happened? Lena told him about the conversation with Maya, about her friend's concerns and warnings. Alessandro listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. She's not wrong to worry, he said when Lena finished. Everything she said is valid. I know. And you're staying anyway? I'm staying anyway. Alessandro pulled her into his arms, and Lena let herself lean into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I'm going to make this worth it, he murmured into her hair. I'm going to build something legitimate, something you can be proud of. I'm going to be the man you deserve. You're already the man I need. There's a difference. Not to me. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the city pulsed beyond the windows. Lena thought about Maya's warnings, about the FBI's interest, about all the ways this could go wrong. But she also thought about Alessandro's hands, gentle despite their capacity for violence, about his honesty, brutal and complete, about the way he looked at her like she was the most important thing in his world, and she chose to believe that love could be stronger than danger, that change was possible, that two broken people could build something whole together. It was probably foolish, probably reckless, probably doomed to end in heartbreak or worse, but it was hers, and that made it worth fighting for. 2 days later, Alessandro came home with news that changed everything. Viktor Kozlov is dead, he said without preamble. Lena looked up from her book, her heart stuttering. What? Kozlov, the loan shark who was threatening Julian. Someone killed him last night. Professional hit, very clean. Did you? No, I had nothing to do with it. Alessandro's expression was grim. But the timing is suspicious. Right after I paid off Julian's debt, right after the break-in at your apartment. Someone else wanted Kozlov dead. Who? I don't know yet, but I'm finding out. He sat beside her on the couch. This could be good news or bad news. Good, because Kozlov was a problem I was glad to be rid of. Bad, because whoever killed him might come looking for the money I paid him. $200,000. Plus interest. Nearly $250,000 total. Lena's stomach sank. So we're not out of danger yet. We were never out of danger. We just traded one threat for a different one. Alessandro took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. But I meant what I said. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Whatever this is, whoever's behind it, I'll handle it. How? The same way I always handle things. Carefully, strategically, and with overwhelming force when necessary. It should have scared her, that casual acknowledgement of violence, but Lena found herself grateful for it instead. In Alessandro's world, violence was a tool, not a passion. He wielded it with precision, not rage. That made him dangerous, but it also made him effective. What do we do now? She asked. Now we wait. Whoever killed Kozlov will make a move eventually, and when they do, I'll be ready. The waiting was the worst part. Days passed with no new developments, no threats, no contact from mysterious enemies. Lena went to work, came home to Alessandro, tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the tension was constant, thrumming beneath the surface of every moment. And then exactly 1 week after Kozlov's death, everything came crashing down. Lena was at the hospital when her phone rang. An unknown number again. Hello? Lena Carter. A man's voice this time, unfamiliar. Who is this? Someone with information you need, about your boyfriend and the money he paid Viktor Kozlov. Meet me tonight, 10 o'clock, at the coffee shop on the corner of 5th and 43rd. Come alone. I'm not meeting anyone. Then Alessandro Moretti dies. Your choice. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, her heart pounding. This was it, the threat Alessandro had been waiting for, and it was aimed directly at her. She should call Alessandro, tell him about the call, let him handle it. But the voice had been clear, come alone, or Alessandro dies. Lena looked at the clock. She had 8 hours to decide whether to trust the stranger's threat or trust Alessandro's ability to protect them both. Either choice could be fatal, and the wrong choice could cost her everything. Lena's hands shook as she slipped the phone back into her pocket. 8 hours. She had 8 hours to decide whether to walk into what was almost certainly a trap or tell Alessandro and risk whoever was on that call making good on their threat. She finished her shift on autopilot, her mind racing through scenarios. Every option seemed to end badly. If she went alone, she could be killed or kidnapped. If she told Alessandro and he intervened, the caller might have a backup plan already in motion. If she did nothing, Alessandro could die. By the time she left the hospital at 6, she'd made her decision. She would tell Alessandro everything. They'd promised honesty, no more secrets. And if there was anyone who could handle a threat like this, it was him. She arrived at the penthouse to find Alessandro in his office, surrounded by papers and talking urgently on the phone in Italian. He looked up when she entered, and whatever he saw in her face made him end the call immediately. What happened? Lena told him about the phone call, watching his expression shift from concern to cold fury. You should have called me immediately. I know. I'm sorry. I panicked. Alessandro stood, moving around the desk to pull her into his arms. It's all right. You're telling me now. That's what matters. He pulled back to look at her. You weren't actually considering going alone, were you? For about 5 minutes. Then I remembered I'm not an idiot. Despite the situation, Alessandro's lips twitched. Good. Because if you'd gone alone, I would have been very angry with you. After I rescued you, of course. So what do we do? We set a trap of our own. Alessandro pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus, I need a team ready in 2 hours, full tactical. I'll send you the location. He spent the next hour coordinating, making calls, arranging pieces on a chessboard Lena couldn't see. She watched him work, marveling at the transformation. This wasn't the tender man who held her at night. This was the strategist, the leader, the crime boss who'd survived in a world that ate the weak. Here's what's going to happen, Alessandro said finally, turning to face her. You're going to that coffee shop, but you won't be alone. I'll have people positioned around the entire block. The moment this person reveals themselves, we'll have them. What if they're watching? What if they see your people? They won't. My team is very good at being invisible. And what if they hurt me before your team can intervene? Alessandro's expression darkened. They won't get the chance. I'll be there too, close enough to reach you in seconds. Alessandro, if they see you, they won't. He cupped her face in his hands. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Trust me. Lena did trust him. That was the terrifying part. She trusted this dangerous man with her life, her safety, her future. Okay, she said. I'll do it. At 9:30, they left the penthouse. Lena rode in Alessandro's SUV while he gave final instructions to his team through an earpiece. When they were 2 blocks from the coffee shop, the car stopped. This is as close as I can get without risking being seen, Alessandro said. He handed her a small device that looked like a button. This is a panic button. Press it if anything goes wrong. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. Just press it and my team will move in immediately. Lena tucked it into her pocket. What if they search me? Then we move to plan B. What's plan B? I come in shooting. Alessandro's expression was deadly serious. I'd prefer to avoid that, but I will if necessary. He pulled her close, kissing her hard and fast. Be smart. Be careful. And come back to me. I will. Lena walked the last 2 blocks alone, her heart pounding with every step. The coffee shop was still open, warm light spilling onto the street. She pushed through the door at exactly 10 o'clock. The place was nearly empty. A barista behind the counter, a college student in the corner with headphones on, and a man sitting at a table by the window. The man looked up when she entered, and Lena's breath caught. It was Julian. He stood as she approached, his face pale and drawn. Lena, thank you for coming. What the hell is this? You called me? You threatened Alessandro? Keep your voice down. Please, just sit. Lena sat, her hand moving to the panic button in her pocket. You have 30 seconds to explain before I walk out of here. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Julian's hands were shaking. Leaving New York like Moretti told me to, it wasn't enough. Kozlov's people, they found me anyway. They want the money back. The money Moretti paid. That's not my problem. It is your problem because they know about you. They know you're with Moretti. They think you can convince him to pay them. Why would they think that? Julian's face crumpled with guilt. Because I told them. I'm sorry, I was desperate. They were going to kill me. Lena stood abruptly. You used me as leverage again. After everything. After Alessandro paid your debt and let you walk away alive. You threw me to another pack of wolves. Lena, please. Who killed Viktor Kozlov? Julian blinked. What? Who killed him? Was it you? No, I don't know who killed him. I swear. But whoever did it, they took the money Moretti paid him. And now they want more. This doesn't make sense. If someone killed Kozlov and took the money, why would they need Alessandro to pay again? Because they know he will. For you. They know he'd pay anything to keep you safe. The pieces clicked into place in Lena's mind. This wasn't about the money at all. This was about testing Alessandro, about seeing how far he'd go, how much he'd sacrifice. Who are they? Lena demanded. Who's behind this? I don't know names. They're Russian, connected to Kozlov's organization. They said they'd kill me if I didn't deliver you. Said they'd kill you if I didn't show up. I didn't know what else to do. Lena's hand closed around the panic button, but before she could press it, the door to the coffee shop opened. 3 men walked in, large, intimidating, with the kind of casual menace that made the barista immediately find somewhere else to be. The college student in the corner didn't look up from their laptop, and Lena realized with a sinking feeling that they were probably part of this too. The lead man, older, with gray at his temples and cold blue eyes, looked at Julian. You did well. Now leave. You said you'd let me go. You said if I brought her, and I'm keeping my word, you're free to leave. Whether you survive the next 24 hours depends on factors outside my control. Julian looked at Lena, his expression pleading for forgiveness she didn't have to give. Then he ran, practically fleeing the coffee shop. The man turned his attention to Lena. Miss Carter, thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice. No, you didn't. He gestured for his men to check the shop. They moved efficiently, searching the bathroom, the back room. One of them pulled the college student's headphones off, spoke to them briefly, then nodded to the leader. We're clear. Excellent. The man sat across from Lena, folding his hands on the table. My name is Dmitry Volkov. Viktor Kozlov was my cousin. Lena's stomach dropped. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Viktor was careful about his family connections, kept us separate from his business. But blood is blood, Miss Carter, and when someone kills my family, I take it personally. I had nothing to do with his death. I know, but Alessandro Moretti did. Alessandro didn't kill your cousin. Dmitry smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Perhaps not directly, but Moretti paid off the debt that put Viktor in the crosshairs. The night Viktor received that payment, he was killed, and the money was stolen. Quite the coincidence, no? Alessandro had nothing to do with it. Maybe, maybe not, but I've decided he owes me a debt regardless. For my cousin's life, for my family's honor. Dmitry leaned forward. And you, Ms. Carter, are how he's going to pay it. Lena pressed the panic button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, harder. Dmitry's smile widened. Looking for this? He pulled an identical device from his pocket. We found it when we searched Julian before he contacted you. Clever, really, but not clever enough. Terror flooded through Lena's system. Alessandro didn't know. He thought she had a way to signal for help, but Dmitry had already neutralized it. What do you want? $5 million, delivered to me within 24 hours. In exchange, you go free and we leave Moretti alone. He'll never... He will. For you. Dmitry stood. My men are going to take you somewhere safe. Not to hurt you, just to ensure Moretti takes this seriously. Once we have the money, you'll be released. This is kidnapping. This is business, and if Moretti is smart, it will be concluded quickly and peacefully. One of Dmitry's men moved toward Lena, reaching for her arm. She jerked back, and that's when the window exploded. Glass shattered inward as Alessandro came through it, hitting the ground in a roll and coming up with a gun already drawn. His first shot took down the man reaching for Lena. His second hit the man by the door. Dmitry dove for cover, shouting in Russian. Down! Alessandro yelled, and Lena dropped to the floor as gunfire erupted. It lasted maybe 30 seconds but felt like hours. The coffee shop became a war zone, bullets punching through walls, tables splintering. Lena covered her head with her hands, making herself as small as possible. Then silence. Lena looked up cautiously. Alessandro was standing over Dmitri, his gun pointed at the older man's head. The two men Dmitri had brought were down, Marcus and Enzo covering them with weapons drawn. "You made a mistake," Alessandro said, his voice deadly calm. "You threatened someone under my protection." "You killed Victor." "I didn't kill Victor. I didn't even know he was dead until after the fact. But you know what? I'm glad he's dead. One less piece of garbage in the world." Alessandro's finger tightened on the trigger. "And if you ever come near Lena again, you'll join him. You can't kill me. Your organization will hear that you got yourself killed trying to extort me. They'll write you off as an idiot who overstepped. No one will come for revenge." Alessandro glanced at Marcus. "Get him out of here. Take him somewhere quiet. I want to know everything. Who else is involved? Who killed Victor? What their endgame is." Marcus and Enzo hauled Dmitri to his feet, dragging him toward the back exit. Alessandro finally lowered his gun and turned to Lena. "Are you hurt?" Lena shook her head, unable to speak. The adrenaline was crashing through her system, making her shake. Alessandro holstered his weapon and crossed to her, pulling her up and into his arms. "I've got you. You're safe." The panic button. He had it. "I know. We figured that out when you pressed it and nothing happened. That's when I stopped waiting." He cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "I told you I wouldn't let anything happen to you. I meant it. You came through a window. It was the fastest route." Lena started laughing, slightly hysterical. "You came through a window like an action movie." "I've always been dramatic." Alessandro kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Let's get you out of here." Outside, police sirens were approaching. Alessandro's team melted away into the shadows with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace they'd been there. Alessandro kept Lena close as they moved through the back alleys, eventually reaching the SUV parked 3 blocks away. Once inside, Lena finally let herself break down. Sobs racked her body as Alessandro held her, murmuring reassurances in Italian and English, his hand stroking her hair. "I was so scared," she gasped out. "I know. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated Julian would betray you again." "How did you know to come in?" "When the panic button didn't work, I knew something was wrong. I was already moving toward the shop when I saw Dimitri's men checking it. At that point, subtlety was pointless." "What's going to happen to Dmitri?" "He's going to tell me everything he knows. Then he's going to disappear." Lena pulled back to look at him. "Are you going to kill him?" Alessandro's expression was unreadable. "Do you want me to?" "I don't know. Part of me says yes. Part of me is horrified I'm even considering it. Then I'll make the decision for you. He threatened you. He planned to kidnap you. Those crimes carry consequences in my world." Alessandro's thumb brushed away her tears. "But I won't do it personally. I'll hand him over to people who have their own grievances with the Volkov family. What they do with him is their business." It was a thin distinction, but Lena appreciated it anyway. Alessandro was trying to give her deniability, to keep some distance between her and the violence. They went back to the penthouse, and Alessandro made her take a hot shower while he dealt with the aftermath. Calls to his lawyers, his people, the various moving parts of his empire that needed to be managed after a public shootout. When Lena emerged, wrapped in his robe, Alessandro was waiting with tea and something stronger, if she wanted it. "The police?" she asked. "We'll find no useful evidence at the coffee shop. The barista saw nothing, remembers nothing. The building's security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. As far as official records go, there was a gang altercation between unknown parties. You and I were never there." "And Julian?" Alessandro's expression hardened. "Julian is being collected as we speak. He's going to answer for setting you up. Again. Don't kill him?" "I won't. But he's done in this city, done in this country probably. I'm going to make sure he understands that the only reason he's still breathing is because you keep asking me to spare him. Maybe the third time will finally make it stick." Lena sipped her tea, feeling the warmth spread through her. "What happens now?" Now we find out who actually killed Viktor Kozlov. Because Dmitry was telling the truth about one thing. Someone killed Viktor and took the money. That person is still out there, and they're either very smart or very lucky to have stayed hidden this long. Does it matter? Can't we just let it go? We could, but unsolved murders have a way of coming back around. Better to know who did it and why than to be surprised later. It took 3 days for Dmitry to break. Alessandro's people were thorough, and when they finally brought Alessandro the information, his expression was grim. It was the FBI, he told Lena. She stared at him. What? Special Agent Sarah Chen, the one who contacted you. She's been running an off-books operation to take down the Russian mob in New York. She killed Viktor to destabilize their organization and took the money to fund her operations. Very illegal, very clever. That's insane. That's ambitious. Chen wanted to make a name for herself, and she didn't care about the rules. Alessandro paced the living room. The problem is, now she knows I'm onto her, and cornered federal agents are dangerous. What are you going to do? I'm going to give her a choice. She can back off her investigation into me, stop her illegal operations, and we'll pretend this never happened. Or I can expose what she's done, end her career, and probably send her to prison. You have evidence? Dmitry kept meticulous records, including video of Chen entering Viktor's building the night he was killed. It's enough to destroy her. Lena felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Agent Chen had tried to recruit her, had threatened her with prosecution, all while running her own criminal operation. Do it, she said. Give her the choice. But if she doesn't back off, bury her. Alessandro smiled, fierce and proud. I love it when you're ruthless. The meeting with Agent Chen happened 2 days later in a parking garage, appropriately dramatic for the circumstances. Alessandro brought Lena with him, along with Marcus and Enzo. Chen arrived alone, which was either brave or stupid. Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Carter. She nodded to each of them. I got your message. Then you know why we're here, Alessandro said. You killed Viktor Kozlov. You stole $240,000. You've been running illegal operations under the cover of your badge. You can't prove any of that. Alessandro pulled out a tablet and hit play. The video showed Chen entering Viktor's building, clear as day. Then another video, this one from inside Viktor's apartment. Chen shooting him twice in the chest, searching his safe, taking the money. Chen's face went pale. Where did you get that? Viktor had cameras you didn't know about. Very paranoid man. Lucky for me. Alessandro turned off the tablet. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to close your investigation into me. You're going to stop your illegal operations. And you're going to leave Lena alone, forever. And if I don't? Then I send this video to your superiors, to the media, to everyone. Your career ends. You go to prison. Probably for life, given that you killed someone. Chen's jaw clenched. You're blackmailing a federal agent. I'm giving you a chance to walk away. That's more than you gave Viktor Kozlov. For a long moment, Chen said nothing. Then slowly, she nodded. Fine. The investigation is closed. I'll make sure your name never comes up again in any official capacity. And Lena? I'll forget she exists. Good. Alessandro stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. But understand this, Agent Chen. If you ever change your mind, if you ever come after either of us again, that video goes public. And I have enough resources and connections to make sure you never work in law enforcement again. Are we clear? Crystal. Chen left without another word, and Lena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Is it really over? She asked. This part is. There will always be other threats, other problems, but the immediate danger is handled. Alessandro took her hand. You're safe. We're safe. Over the next several weeks, life began to settle into something resembling normal. Alessandro continued restructuring his business, moving away from the criminal operations and into legitimate enterprises. It was slow, complicated work, but he was committed. Lena went back to full-time at the hospital, throwing herself into her patients with renewed energy. She met Maya for coffee and slowly repaired their friendship, though things weren't quite the same as they'd been before. And every night, she came home to Alessandro, to the penthouse that had become their shared space. They cooked together, watched movies, made love with increasing tenderness and passion. They talked about the future, carefully, tentatively, but with growing confidence. 6 months after that first desperate kiss at the charity gala, Alessandro took Lena back to the lake where they'd had their picnic. The autumn colors had given way to winter snow, and the landscape was transformed into something pristine and beautiful. "I have something to ask you," Alessandro said, as they stood at the water's edge. Lena's heart began to race. "Okay. I know this has been fast. I know we've been through more in 6 months than most couples experience in years. I know there are still risks, still complications." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands. "But Lena, you've changed my life. You've made me want to be better, to build something real. You've given me hope for a future I didn't think I could have." He dropped to one knee and Lena's breath caught. "I'm not perfect. I'll probably never be perfect. But I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you, to protect you, to love you with everything I have." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Lena Carter, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Lena's face. She thought about everything they'd been through, the danger, the fear, the violence. But she also thought about the tenderness, the honesty, the way Alessandro had kept every promise he'd made to her. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, I'll marry you." Alessandro kissed her as snow began to fall around them, soft and perfect. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. "I have something for you too," Lena said. "I've been waiting for the right moment." She pulled out her own small box, and Alessandro's eyebrows rose. "You're proposing back?" "No, I'm giving you this." She opened it to reveal a small key. "It's the key to my apartment, the one I finally moved back into last week. I want you to have it. I want you to have access to every part of my life." Alessandro took the key, his expression soft. "I already have a key to your apartment." "I know. You had one made weeks ago, but this is different. This is me giving it to you, choosing to give it to you." He understood the distinction, the symbolism. "Thank you." They drove back to the city as newly engaged couple, already making plans. A small wedding, they decided. Just close friends and family. Nothing ostentatious. Alessandro's transition out of criminal operations continued steadily. Within a year, he divested himself of everything illegal, keeping only the legitimate businesses. It cost him power, cost him connections, cost him the respect of men who valued violence over strategy. But he gained something more valuable: peace. And Lena. They married in a small ceremony in the penthouse, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Maya was there, having finally accepted that Lena had made her choice, and it was the right one for her. Alessandro's business partners attended, along with a handful of people from his old life who'd supported his transition. Lena wore a simple white dress and carried white roses. Alessandro wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and protect each other, through whatever came next, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring Alessandro's family's homeland. They ate amazing food, visited ancient ruins, and spent lazy afternoons in bed, talking about their future. When they returned to New York, they bought a house in Brooklyn, something with a yard and room to grow. Lena continued working at the hospital, eventually taking a position training new pediatric nurses. Alessandro focused on his real estate empire, building affordable housing and community centers in underserved neighborhoods. He never forgot where he came from or what he'd done, but he chose every day to be better, to do better. And Lena stood beside him, not blind to his past, but choosing to focus on their future. 2 years after their wedding, Lena discovered she was pregnant. Alessandro cried when she told him. Overcome with emotions he couldn't name, they prepared for parenthood together, transforming one of the bedrooms into a nursery, reading every book they could find. Their daughter was born on a clear spring morning, perfect and healthy. They named her Elena, after Alessandro's mother. And when Alessandro held his daughter for the first time, looking down at her tiny face with such tender wonder, Lena knew without doubt that she'd made the right choice. The man who'd once been one of New York's most feared crime bosses was now a devoted father, husband, and legitimate businessman. He still had edges, still had the capacity for controlled violence if necessary, but he chose gentleness. He chose family. He chose love. And Lena, who'd started this journey with a desperate request to a stranger at a gala, had found something she never expected, a partner who saw all of her and loved her anyway, who protected her fiercely while respecting her strength, who had changed his entire life because she'd asked him to try. Years later, when Elena was old enough to ask how her parents met, Lena and Alessandro would exchange a look and smile. "It's a long story," Lena would say. "A very dramatic story," Alessandro would add. "But it has a happy ending," Lena would finish. And it did. Not perfect. Nothing ever was. But happy. Real. Hard-won and deeply cherished. Lena had grabbed a stranger's collar in a moment of desperation and begged for a kiss. That stranger had kissed her back and changed both their lives forever. From that single, reckless choice came a love story that defied every odd, survived every threat, and built something lasting from the ruins of their broken pasts. It was dangerous, it was complicated, it was everything everyone had warned her against, and it was absolutely, perfectly worth it